Hey JD, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Hope everything's going good with you.
Yes, sir. Everything's going as well as possible. There was a couple of things that you had on your mind that you wanted to bring up, and I was hoping you could shed some light on how this new carry killer bill is going to affect people that seem to have been forgotten in this process.
Exactly. I mean, everyone is talking about how unconstitutional this bill is, how it's essentially New Jersey is going the same way that the southern states did after Brown versus Board of Education, and just pushing back against the Supreme Court. But there's one thing no one is talking about. New Jersey's changing what it takes to get a firearms ID, and more specifically, what it takes to be denied a firearms ID. And that would include, because a firearms ID is prerequisite for getting carry permit, pistol permits, anything in the state. You can't do anything without it. They're expanding the list of prohibited people, which honestly, they're focusing in on voluntary mental health.
Okay.
No,
So I don't mean to cut you off. So the
sure.
current threshold is what?
So currently, there's a section under to someone that could be denied. It reads out any person who suffers from a physical defect or disease, which would make it unsafe for him to handle a firearm, or to any person who's ever been confined for a mental disorder or alcoholic use of any, blah, 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 blah. There's a workaround of that is if the person produces a certificate from a medical doctor or a psychiatrist licensed in New Jersey, satisfactory proof that they're no longer suffering from whatever it was that flagged on the record. Now, I didn't know about all of this until about 2016. So, some background: in 1989, when I was 14, I have a voluntary mental health record. It's around truancy. It was a referral from a social worker. I essentially was a little bit bullied that if I didn't go sign in, get evaluated, the social worker was going to push that, oh, you'll take me to a judge and put me in juvie for truancy. I was 14, didn't know any better. Fine, signed in. Had the evaluation done. I was supposed to be in a 30-day program. 2 weeks later, I'm released. They essentially pushed everything that, all right, this is more to do with what's going on in my household, things like that when I was growing up, and the whole family needs to go to family therapy. There's actually a global assessment of functioning score that was tied to my discharge paper that gave a score of 80. The summary of that essentially is transient symptoms that are expected reactions to psychosocial stressors. So, not a big deal. 1996, I apply for a firearms ID, pistol permits. It's not a problem. Nothing happens. Apparently, after 2013, from what I was told, laws changed. So when I changed my address on my firearms ID in 2016, I almost got denied. Ended up going back and forth, and my local police station was pretty good. They kind of worked with me, realizing, hey, we're not going to hit you with a fourth-degree felony, because I had answered the questions the same way I did back in '96. But they did tell me that unless I went and got either an expungement or a letter from a psychologist or a medical doctor, I would be denied. Little additional detail on there. I originally went to look for an expungement. The problem with that being is New Jersey is the only one that recognizes this as something prohibiting. NICS does not register a minor that's truant and having problems in the household as a disqualifying factor. So the lawyer I retained at the time told me that if I did get this expunged, New Jersey would clear my record, but that would force a record into the NICS system that isn't there. NICS can't handle a removal of a record that doesn't exist, which would automatically create a disqualification that you can't remove then. So I was informed, whole stop, do not go that way. So I went to a psychologist, licensed in New Jersey, 8-hour clinical in-person interview, testing, all of this. I come out, flying colors, get a letter that, clearly says, and specifically says, because I told the psychologist why I was there, that No, there's no reason, no mental disorder whatsoever, no reason that he should be denied a firearm. And that works until now. Now, they're altering the law.
Right. So we're talking about the Joe Danielson carry killer bill, right? Do you have those numbers handy on you?
Yeah, that's Assembly 4769, Senate 3214.
Right. So this is the bill that's going to overhaul our carry system that's been perfect for 40, 50, 60 years. Now it needs to change because the peasants can actually get a carry permit. So go ahead and let's talk about what seems like a minor change, but really it isn't. This is like a butterfly effect of a change. It's a small wing flutter that's going to create a tsunami in essence, correct?
That's correct. So within that particular part of the legislation where originally, as I read out before, any person who suffers from a defect, disease, so on, they're removing the text of to any person who has ever been confined for a mental disorder. So that's the first part. They are then adding a new line into that subsection to any person who has previously been voluntarily admitted, inpatient treatment, involuntary admitted, unless the court has expunged the record, you are prohibited in the state of New Jersey.
Whether it's voluntary or
voluntary, yeah, there is no clarification of this. There's nothing else. They do reference very specific titles, 3427.1, as the, what classifies as the mental disorder, involuntary, voluntary, that kind of thing. And I'll get to that in a little while. As of it is right now, if I take this completely at face value, I'm instantly prohibited the second this signs. This provision is active on signature.
So let me get this straight, and not to be dismissive of your plight here, but let's just, try to distill this a little bit. So, because of when you were 14 years old, you may have skipped some school and you were truant. And now here we are as an adult looking back on youth records over something you were bullied to do voluntarily instead of seeing a judge. And now, if this becomes law, you might be stripped of your rights. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, did I get anything like off there, or does that sound about right?
No, you got it right. And as I said, in '96 when I applied, I answered the questions on mental health. No, had I ever been, committed or anything like that? It didn't come up and as a problem until I went to move here. Now the definitions are of a question of this, but we have to take into how New Jersey kind of does things. The actual definitions that they're referencing, it was impossible for me to be a patient. It was impossible for me to voluntarily sign in because I was a minor, even though I have record that I did it, and no mental illness because we have a very specific definition of mental illness. And those same definitions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say you weren't anything special, like an emancipated youth. You were just a minor.
I was a minor.
Okay.
Yep. But, and even, my mother had at one point, several weeks prior, thought to try to get me evaluated. And they said, no, I didn't need to go in there. It wasn't until that social worker said, well, unless you sign yourself in, I'm going to convince a judge to put you in juvie for missing school.
Right. Okay.
So, again, 14 years old. What did I know that I could just say, no,
right.
try it,
They don't really teach civics now. I doubt they taught it then. So,
especially to a 14-year-old who was skipping school a lot.
Exactly. You missed that day. The irony of it is you missed that day.
Yeah.
So, you're saying the definitions, trying to sort through all of this. Now you couldn't have been admitted. You couldn't have done all these things because you were a minor.
Correct. And New Jersey clearly calls out voluntary admission. Someone over the age of 18 who signed themselves in. A patient. Someone who's over the age of 18. The mental illness, I would have to have been severely compromised, which, that's why I referenced that that GAF score and what the definition of it was. It clearly says I wasn't. So there, by no way, shape, or form should this apply to me. But it's applying to me now, requiring that letter. So odds are it's going to apply when they sign this. And I'm taking a chance here because I'm going to run essentially with this definition that this does not apply. But if New Jersey decides to say it does, as in many things with the legal system in New Jersey is, it'll be me who has to prove my innocence, not them proving my guilt.
Right, which we know under the new lens of the way we're supposed to be viewing these things, with the New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin opinion, the onus and the burden is supposed to be on the state for everything now. I mean, so essentially everything is supposed to revert back also to an innocent until proven guilty. And, like you said, New Jersey loves to make it you're guilty until you're proven innocent. And how the whole state's criminal, 2C laws, concerning firearms has allowed to stay for decades is beyond me, because it is directly just an opposition of, innocent until proven guilty. But that's a very big digression here.
Well, it's actually quite relevant because when I was doing research to find a psychologist that would do a psychological eval, and I didn't understand when the police said they needed the letter that it didn't need to be as specific as I didn't have to tell essentially the psychologist I was looking for, for my firearms permit. To find one that would actually do the evaluation once they knew what it was for was difficult. So I went through court records, and unfortunately I don't remember the case. It was a Superior Court judge in New Jersey who said anybody, and I'm paraphrasing, anyone in New Jersey who chooses to exercise their Second Amendment does it at their own peril because they are guilty until proven innocent here.
Yeah, and that's a fact, and I've read that as well. I don't remember the case as well. And this is something that you and I haven't discussed offline, or emailed about. But in your opinion, I mean, just looking at this, and I have my own opinion on it. Do you feel that this might be a gigantic barrier to care for people going forward?
Oh, it will get people killed. Currently, I forget where I read this years ago. One of the national organizations of psychiatry commented about New Jersey's laws and the whole way that they handle any mental health is dangerous, that it prohibits people who own firearms from actually seeking help when they could get treatment and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, if an ADHD evaluation of somebody can get you denied when you were 4 and don't even remember it's there, or if anyone who's ever purchased a firearm in New Jersey, even after the multiple background checks you do, when you go to actually do your NICS check, you get that little New Jersey form that has that question: have you gone for any psychiatric treatment or seen a psychiatric doctor since you last got your firearms ID or permit? If you say no to that, they can't continue the sale.
Right.
So, and I love this state loves to say, and they use, and I've always hated this adjusted rate where we tie in suicides, but they love to say how safe we are. But if you actually look at the methods people commit suicide with in states like New Jersey and Massachusetts, because I've seen those records, yes, firearms use in suicide is statistically a lower percentage than other states. Our suffocation methods are 3 times the percentage, though. So people just chose another method, and it's boggled the mind. It really is that some of these legislators, it's more of, well, we're going to say we want to keep people safe, but really we only care if they kill themselves with a disapproved method. If they do it without a firearm, then we don't care.
Right,
Because,
and this is something that all these researchers come up very saccharine and off when they try to
yeah,
work their way through this. Because if you take New Hampshire, for example, and this is using, I believe, Gifford Center's data, they said that 9 out of 10 firearm related deaths in the state of New Hampshire is a suicide. 9 out of 10. But let's look at that. They have a very, very, very low crime rate. With Massachusetts, which you brought up, is the most violent state in New England. New Hampshire is one of the least violent states in New England, and they have permitless carry. They have pretty decent gun laws. And let's look at it. 9 out of 10 people would rather use a firearm on themselves rather than their fellow man. So when you look at those numbers for, like, say, New Jersey, well, our suicide numbers by firearm might be very down because everyone's choking themselves out, as you've cited. Um, our fellow man in New Jersey is much more at home using firearms on their neighbor than themselves. So I think that's
Yeah.
telling a whole nother story for sure.
Oh no, it definitely does, and that's I'm not adjusted rates, and I deal in data and statistics, things like that. It's just the nature and the work that I do. But adjusted rates have a problem because they can be very easily tweaked. You know, you heard, and if you heard any of the assembly hearings or the Senate hearings where they were discussing these bills, they were bringing up, oh, we're the third safest or the second safest, going back and forth. But if you actually look at the raw data, more than 30 states have less people murdered in them every year than we do.
Oh yeah,
But,
yeah.
we can say a state like, and I think it's Wyoming, according to the FBI, has single digits of people killed a year. And even suicides doesn't really cross, if you include all, I don't think it goes over maybe 100, 120, and I could be wrong on that, but it is a very low number. We're at, what, 500, 600 if you combine suicides and murder? Murder's over 400.
Sure, yeah, it's way up there. Well,
But
Jay,
Wyoming is way worse because it's absolutely in the bottom. It's 24 out of 100,000 or something to that effect.
that's the Wild West, man.
Yeah, it's again, adjusted rates work when the numbers are close. When there's such a disparity in population and things like that, now you're just tweaking numbers to get an effect you want.
Of course. So, JD, what do we think going forward this means for people in New Jersey? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball here, but if I had to make the bet, I'd be putting a lot of money on this is going to become law probably before the end of the year.
Yeah, there's honestly, again, listening to those hearings and the blatant disregard for people's rights, and that's why I made the reference. It was like the racist states that were bucking Brown versus Board of Education.
Right.
They didn't like that, so they were going to do whatever they could, pass whatever law or code they could. New Jersey's following in that grand tradition, and I'm sure the courts will eventually sort it out. But how many people will be permanently stripped of their rights? If this goes the way I think it's going to, just speaking personally, again, the definitions, this should be fine. But if they turn around, decide to do an audit somehow, and then flag me, if I became prohibited and didn't turn in my firearms ID within 5 days, I'm a felon now. I will be nationally prohibited from having my Second Amendment rights. I'm the one that's going to have to try to fight that and get that overturned. Will I be able to? Who knows?
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that, JD. Well, I definitely appreciate your time and talking to me about this. Do you have anything else to add, before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate this is the one thing that, as I said, everybody's been fighting all of the other ones. This is the one thing I couldn't really get anybody to pick up. And I talked to Association of New Jersey Rifle Pistol Clubs. They had brought it up privately, but none of our representatives would discuss this publicly. So anything getting information out on this and getting people talk, calling representatives, having somebody pick this up, because right now it's just going under the table and nobody's noticing on it. But it is going to affect a massive amount of people. And honestly, my situation aside, I think it's going to get people killed. Yeah. The whole idea of safety is blown out the window when, you may own firearms. You may be depressed, want to go talk to somebody. Well, now you got to worry if the state's going to strip your rights from you.
Yeah, and that can go a lot of different ways, and everybody's story and journey is a personal one. So there is no one-size-fits-all answer to any of this.
No. But what the state is doing is not it. They could have very easily affected things. And listen, The Bruin case was very clear. There can be reasonable training, reasonable fees. You can require IDs. Nobody here really would have questioned that. Daniel Sinek, completely said it in a video interview or video meeting that he was having. This has nothing to do with, crime, saving lives there. This is all about the law-abiding gun owner. So they are just fighting back against this, and I can't believe what they're doing.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what happens. All right, JD, let's end it right there. And I definitely appreciate the time, and I hope you have a happy holiday season and all that.
Thank you. You as well. And thank you for your time and, trying to get some attention on this.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right.